In a move that one official describes as an instance of, quote, transparent corruption, Donald Trump's Justice Department has ordered the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York to drop the federal criminal charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The director came in a memo last night from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, who says that DOJ, quote, has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based. In short, they're not even trying to hide the fact that this is political. Mayor Eric Adams was indicted in September of last year, 9 months before the mayoral primary scheduled for June. The charges include wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals for a pay-to-play scheme so simple a child could understand it. The mayor allegedly got illegal campaign contributions and travel benefits from Turkish officials for more than 10 years. And Eric Adams allegedly repaid them by providing favors to them. Things like pressuring the New York Fire Department to allow a new Turkish consulate building to open without an inspection. Adams pleaded not guilty and has denied all wrongdoing, which he reiterated again today. The charges are the end result of a probe worked on by these nonpartisan career prosecutors and FBI agents. And just a month ago, SDNY said they had uncovered more evidence of more criminal conduct by Eric Adams. There's not one shred of evidence that the charges against Eric Adams were ever politically motivated. The facts, however, are secondary in Donald Trump's Justice Department to a new principle. What Donald Trump wants, what benefits Donald Trump gets. The president has called Mayor Adams a victim of an unjust political persecution, just like him. As for the mayor, he visited Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, Florida last month. He attended the inauguration. He has declined to criticize anything the Trump administration has done in recent weeks. Now, the Trump Justice Department is moving to get the charges against Adams dismissed with prejudice. According to the New York Times, that means, quote, the case could be revived if merited or if it pleased the president. We're back with Glenn, Christy, and Maya. Glenn, what is happening at the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. is appalling, but there is something different when it happens at SDNY. Explain.
SDNY, I'm a New Yorker, so forgive me for using this metaphor. It is the Yankee Stadium of federal prosecutor's office. It's really central. For one thing, it's produced a number of luminaries, one of whom was Rudy Giuliani back in the day. But this case against Adams, it has been criticized by people on both sides. But the way that this was dismissed, the claims, and one of the most extraordinary parts of this is in Bove's memo to Danielle Sassoon, the interim U.S. attorney there. He brings up that this might impinge on Adams's capacity to vigorously prosecute the immigration enforcement actions that the White House wants done immediately. Because when he was indicted, Adams was stripped of his security clearances, which have subsequently been restored. So it is the first time that I can recall. First of all, I don't think anyone that I interviewed, and I'd be interested in hearing your guests opine on this. I've never seen a memo like this on many levels, but in particularly to cite a policy/political justification for withdrawing these, apart from its proximity to the election, the fact that he won't be able to help Trump and Trump officials execute the immigration policy is remarkable. And the other thing I will tell you that was also remarkable is, and we included this in our story, Trump administration officials, two of them told me that felt compelled to tell me that there was no quid pro quo, meaning that dismissal of these charges was not an attempt to get from Adams in return a commitment to do immigration enforcement.
Maybe it says the quo preceded the quid. I mean, okay. Christy.
I mean, this memo is so infuriating. He gives two reasons why he's directing SDNY to dismiss this. First, he said, well, there's the timing of this case, as well as the fact that recent actions of the former SDNY U.S. Attorney Damian Williams raise concerns about weaponization and political prosecution. Let's just take both of those first. There's a 90-day rule that's informal within DOJ, which basically says between 60 to 90 days before an election, don't take any sort of overt action in law enforcement to investigate or charge somebody to influence the election. This indictment came down 9 months before the mayoral election. What is the timing concern? That's the first question. Second, these recent actions of the former U.S. attorney. So Damian Williams, a few weeks ago, authored an op-ed about reforms that he thought could take place in New York State. Never mentioned Mayor Adams. It was just kind of a broader look. Having been a public corruption prosecutor for many years, here are some things I think we could do. How is that weaponization? In fact, the line prosecutors, as well as the U.S. attorney who's serving in the interim, Danielle Sassoon, a Scalia clerk, a Federalist Society member who was selected by the Trump administration to be that interim person, they all signed off and said this investigation did not start because of Damian Williams. It started because of evidence found by career law enforcement officers. And we continued it even when he left. So they stood by this, and the judge agreed with them and said he violated no rules here. So that first bucket, that first reason given is ridiculous. Then you have the second reason, which, as Glenn was mentioning, that it's because we have to dismiss it, but without prejudice, so that we could maybe bring it back if he doesn't do what we say, essentially, in following through with Trump's plans on immigration and violent crime in New York City. That is wholly inappropriate. The judge's docket should not be dependent upon whether or not the mayor is following the president's political agenda. That is so inappropriate. And so if you're Judge Ho and you get this request from SDNY, you need to hold a hearing. He's a new judge. You need to hold a hearing, and you need to ask a lot of hard questions about this, about whether or not this is in the interest of justice. He has limited power here, but he does need to make sure that this is in the interest of justice. And if I'm the judge, I dismiss it with prejudice. I'm not letting the mayor of New York City become a puppet to the president to just be there serving his own interests rather than the interests of the people of New York. I mean, it's an outrageous memo. And I know that it has provoked really strong reactions within SDNY.
Glenn, did anybody quit at SDNY, a department sort of prized and prided on independence?
The day is yet young. We don't really know. And the other thing that's really important is the pressure's really on Danielle Sassoon. What was interesting is when we first got word of this yesterday morning, it seemed like it was a fait accompli, that it was simply going to be dismissed. It is noteworthy, if you look at the language behind in all the stories today, it was Bove instructing Sassoon to take these measures. The question is, will she personally execute them, or she also has the option to step aside and say that she doesn't want to do this? We're not, as of this hour, I haven't checked in, we're not at all certain how that's going to play out.
I want to remind us of something from the first Trump administration, which is we had a U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York resign because
Jeff Berman,
because he felt that the president was trying to direct how he should guide his office. Mm-hmm. It was outrageous then, and this is even more outrageous. And it's not only outrageous because the memo itself says the quiet part out loud, because it does. Do our bidding, you'll be fine. Don't, you will be in trouble. It is because we're also hearing reporting that Eric Adams has actually been telling his administration, do not criticize the president, cooperate on immigration. And when you are, and I'm a New Yorker too, and I ran for office against Eric Adams, so full disclosure, I never expected this. And I think we have to call it what it is. It is an outrageous permission to be corrupt and to not be accountable as long as you do the bidding of a president of the United States. That is unheard of. It is unheard of from an office that I have to say we all held tremendous pride in the fact that we were independent and that the only reason we would be told not to do a case was because we didn't have sufficient support for it.
It's amazing.
So
the day
this-
SDNY died.
So this is also the message to everyone else in every other jurisdiction of the country. It is not only about New York, and we all have to say enough.
It's amazing.